May peace and blessings be upon you. Hi guys, this is Shahadat, and today I'm going to watch another Sadhguru video and share my reaction to the arguments presented. Before starting, let me tell you that my worldview is it's got to be logical. I mean, if you try to explain something to me and if you simply say words that don't make any sense, I wouldn't take them as logical. You have to express yourself in a understandable way. And in many of Sadhguru's lectures, I personally find, it's my own experience, that he says a lot of words, but none of those actually means anything. And so it becomes very difficult to extract any meaning out from his lectures. People, some of you guys who are his blind followers, you seem to take whatever he says as like, wow, this is Sadhguru said it, so it has got to be something really precious. But I seem to have the deficiency of that sort of an ability. I don't take things only because somebody has said it. If a mathematics professor comes and tells me, standing in front of me, a world-renowned professor, and says 2 plus 2 is 5, I will say, sorry sir, 2 and 2, if you add them, becomes 4, not 5. So that's the kind of person I am. Anyway, so the question that Sadhguru was trying to address in this particular video was how to stop our mind's chatter. Our minds, we all experience that the mind actually doesn't stop. The mind keeps on going. The only time mind probably stops for a while is when we sleep. Even then, we sometimes see dreams, experience dreams, and so the mind is still going on. So it's a valid question, and let's see how Sadhguru tries to address that question, and then I will share some of my thoughts with you guys in terms of why I think the answer that was provided was not adequate, or what the logical flaws are in the argumentation. So let's start.
Sadhguru, I wanted to know that when we are silent, still we feel that mind chattering, which always bothers us, and our thought always shifts back to past and future imaginations, which will not be any of output. How to get rid of it?
A whole lot of thought about this thoughtlessness. Thoughtlessness, no mind, these kinds of terms have been propagated all over the place, and these terms have been badly misunderstood and made into all kinds of things, and people are striving how to stop my mind. It took millions of years of evolution to get a mind of this kind of capability.
At this point, my logical question is, how do you know that? There is a theory of evolution that says how human beings evolved from single-cell bacteria all the way up to human beings, but the problem that that theory has is to define, to explain mind, explain experience. How did this thing come about? And that is one of the weakest or weaknesses of this theory. So this theory is not really the truth. I mean, this has been produced, put forward as a theory, as a possibility. So it may be true, it may not be. And looking at the human beings with our abilities, our capabilities, looks like it is more, there is something more to this. There are quite a few scholars who discuss these things. the drawbacks of the theory of evolution. But then, I don't know, Sadhguru just used the word evolution. I think that's where what he tries to mean. And when he says it took millions of years for our mind to evolve, I think that's what he's alluding to. He may not be. But if he is alluding to that, then my question will be, how do you know? How do you know? Have you seen it? If you haven't seen it, then it's just you don't know, right?
Isn't it? Millions of years of tremendous amount of nature's work, that today you have a mind of this kind of scope.
Theory.
And now you want to stop it. Why is it that you want to stop it? If your mind was constantly producing absolute pleasantness for you, would you think how to stop this mind? Would you? No. It's producing a lot of unpleasantness. That's why you're thinking of how to stop the mind.
So this is a very valid point, actually. We want to take control of over our thoughts. I think that's what the gentleman meant when he said, "How can we take control over our thoughts?" Basically, how can we keep our mind? How can we make our mind quiet so it doesn't say things? But Sadhguru, on this particular point, I think is very valid, which is when we are experiencing things, when our mind is telling us things that we like, we don't really worry about it. And exactly that same thing happens when, say, you go for a walk in the woods, forest, or you visit somebody that you like, love, and your mind is all saying you all the nice things, good things. We don't want our mind to stop at that point. But the problem usually happens is when we try to meditate or try to focus on one thing, and our mind keeps on going this way, that way, talking about this and talking about that. And we find it difficult. We find that we are not being able to focus. And that's when we try to, we start indulging into the idea of how to control our mind so it focuses on one thing. So the actual solution, as I see from here, is if we could actually get our mind to think about, or to, if we could just focus on the nice things. So when you are trying to meditate, if you can think of the best experiences that you have in your, that you had in your life, or something like that, something pleasant, then you don't need your mind to stop chattering. Whereas if if it goes the other way around, then you need to learn how to ignore the worries and come back to the pleasant thoughts. So on this particular point, I think Sadhguru was right.
This is the first thing. Wherever you go in the world, this has gone so much into people's mind. If you tell them you meditate, they say, "But Sadhguru, I'm not able to stop my mind." I said that will happen only after you stop your kidneys, liver, heart. You stop all these things, then the mind will also stop. Do you want it to stop? No. Then why do you want the mind to stop? Why do you have such a horrible prejudice against the mind? You don't mind if your heart is beating, you can meditate. You don't mind if your liver is working, you can meditate. Your kidneys are functioning, you can meditate. If your brain functions, you can't meditate. What is the problem?
I don't know if you guys can see the problem there. See, when we use the word meditate, we use, what we understand from that is meditation is an exercise of our mind. So the physical heart doesn't really have a direct relationship with our mind in terms of beating of the heart doesn't influence the thinking that we are experiencing, the processing of our mind. It keeps the body going, of course, and that's why the mind seems to exist, but it's not just the brain. I mean, if you, I don't know if you paid attention where in the last statement Sadhguru was saying that why would you want to stop your brain? We don't want to stop our brain. We want the brain to operate. But when we are in the doing the meditation, we want to experience calm and peace. And the way that is possible, or we can achieve that, if we get our mind to think about nice things, good things, enjoyable things, then because it's not, then the mind will, our mind will not stop chattering, but we will enjoy the chattering. So it will not be a problem. Anyway, so just wanted to make that little point. And all these terms Sadhguru is telling us, I cannot see the relevance of it, because towards the end of the lecture, because I've watched it again, once again in the past, he was actually giving you an idea of how you can get your mind to get quiet. So if that's the destination, if you are trying to get your mind to be quiet, and then all these terms are being thrown around, I don't understand why. It's just confusing me even more. Anyway, let's proceed.
You seem to have something against intelligence, isn't it? This is the conspiracy of the stupid against human intelligence, that to meditate means your brain must be frozen.
Nobody said that.
No. You don't have to freeze your brain. We were looking at this yesterday itself. We will initiate you into Shambhavi. It's a simple process. There are many ways to do it. This is one simple way. But it's a powerful process. If you sit here, you will see your body is here, your mind is somewhere, who you are is somewhere else. Once there is a space between you and the mind, then what the mind is not doing, what the mind is doing is not even an issue.
And I take a problem with that, because even though we are talking about, or we are saying mind, we say in my mind, but really you cannot actually separate yourself from your mind, because whatever is happening in your mind is you. You experience everything through your mind. I mean, the signal goes to the brain, yes, taste, vision, touch, heat, cold, temperature, all these sort of things. The sensors are receiving the senses and passing it to the brain. Brain is doing the processing, but the experience that you are experiencing is in your mind. I think the complication is, even in our mind, we can see multiple personalities, we can experience as if there are two different, or sometimes three different people, kind of like talking to each other. One is trying to go this way, the other one is trying to go that way. And that experience actually makes us feel very confused. But if you just focus, think about it step by step, I mean, in a detailed kind of way, you will realize that all these are combined you. You cannot get rid of one. The way Sadhguru just said, that distance yourself from. You can do one thing, which is you can think of distancing your mind, which is you basically, from your body. Okay, so you can probably try to do that to some extent. The body keeps on running on its own operating system. It just keeps on doing its own thing. And you are in a slightly separate place. But separating your mind and you in two different parts, I just cannot visualize it. I cannot understand it. I don't know if you guys can do it, where you, separated from your mind, can actually see your mind doing things. The problem, what I'm trying to highlight here is, when we are saying that you see your mind doing something, this experience, that seeing, whoever is seeing, is that not your mind that's giving you this experience? So it's kind of like two compartments of the mind that we are dealing with. It's not that you are totally separate from your mind. It's not ever possible that the mind is separated from you, the way we can think of separating our body from our consciousness, our mind. We can. I'm not saying it's possible. What I'm saying is we can visualize that, but visualizing the other thing, where I'm just this, and that is my mind. So then, if I say that I'm looking at that mind, immediately the next question is then, what is happening here? This feels to me as a mind as well now. So we are just talking about two different compartments of our mind. One compartment is probably the area that keeps on chattering at us, and the other compartment is the bit where we are trying to separate it from. But this chatter thing, the mind that keeps on chattering, it's not a different thing. It is integrated part of this mind. You cannot really separate it. Anyway, let's proceed.
It is like you're stuck in the traffic jam. You're struggling through the traffic. That's one experience. Suppose you're either standing on Chamundi Hill, or you're floating in a hot air balloon and look down at all the traffic. Very peacefully. Traffic. Why? To the distance, isn't it? When you're in it, traffic is a different experience. From really high up there, sitting in a hot air balloon, you look down, you can't even hear the sounds. Looks wonderful, traffic, isn't it? Yes or no?
And my answer is no, it is not as simple as that. If I use the same example and give you a little bit more scenario to it, then probably you will be able to understand what the thought process that I'm going through. Say you are in a traffic, okay, and you do not have any rush of any sort. You don't have to go to a meeting, or you don't have to be somewhere by some time. So from that viewpoint, the traffic doesn't matter to you. It doesn't matter. It takes 2 hours, the 10-minute journey takes 2 hours. It doesn't matter to you, because you are not in a rush. You will get there at the end of the day. That's, even being inside the traffic, you may feel calm because you haven't got rush. Whereas somebody who needs to get to his office by 9 o'clock and there is traffic, now he's in stress because of his goal. His goal is to be in the office by 9 o'clock, and when he's trying to achieve that goal, this traffic jam is causing a problem to achieve that goal. So he's getting stressed, and that's why it is not enjoyable. Now, on the flip side, you are sitting on top of a balloon and you see traffic underneath in the streets, and yeah, you are not affected by the traffic in any way because you're sitting up in the balloon. And sitting up in the balloon kind of like says that you are not really trying to rush to anywhere, because with a balloon you cannot really do that. So in that situation, what's happening is you are in a little bit distance, but it is not only the physical distance. You are distant from the traffic or the situation because of your engagement. You are not really engaged in anything to do with the traffic. Now, suddenly you see an ambulance is trying to come through. Somebody has called an ambulance. Probably they have got a emergency at their home, and somebody needs to be saved. And this ambulance is trying to get through the traffic, and you are watching from the top. You are watching the ambulance trying to get by, and because of the traffic, it is struggling. It is taking long time, and the siren is going beep 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 beep. Looking at that, immediately you feel like, no. And probably you will start giving instructions to the cars who cannot really hear you. Oi, you move to the left, you go to the right. Because now, even if you are at a distance, that you are involved in that phenomena. So, it is not that the physical distance actually makes the experience better. It is if you are getting affected, if you are looking at it in a way that it affects your experience, if you do not experience that way, if you don't see that ambulance coming through, then you probably don't care, because that doesn't affect you in any way. But when that ambulance is coming and you realize that it is to try to save somebody, immediately you take it on it becomes part of your concern, and immediately sitting up there, you don't feel well. You feel like swearing at the traffic. Right. So, yeah, that's, I mean, I just don't like the idea of somebody guiding you to a thought process, ignoring all the other possibilities, and just try to tell you what they want to tell you using this experience, using this example, whereas this situation may not be exactly the way they are explaining. So I basically try to give you a different viewpoint about the experience that Sadhguru explained.
Because there's a distance. So once there's a distance between you and your mind's activity, mind is not a problem. Mind is a miracle, it is not a problem. And anyway, if thoughts are going continuously, if you're having a mental diarrhea, obviously you ate some bad food, isn't it? Yes. If you're having a physical diarrhea, you ate some bad food, isn't it? If you're having a mental diarrhea, you are obviously consumed something wrong. What this wrong thing could be is, the moment you identify yourself with something that you're not, then you're finished. Your mind is a continuous runs.
And this is where he's turning to the mysticism, I think, because this just is not explainable, understandable in my mind at all. How? You see, mind and body, they are two different kind of things. Mind is not the same as our body. So body can have physical diarrhea because of many reasons. Okay, not only bad food, it can have diarrhea because you somehow had some bacteria. Not through your food, it just was in the air, it got through your breathing, it got into your system. It can happen. Okay, so somehow it got into your tummy and caused havoc, and you are having a diarrhea. Now, that's the physical diarrhea idea. The mind is not a physical thing. So the same principle doesn't have to apply to mind. It may, but doesn't have to. So it is, I find it problematic to have so much confidence in the fact that mind works exactly in this way, in that sort of a claim. In my understanding, I feel that mind is different, slightly different. And so, trying to explain mind in these sort of simple terms, comparing it to a body, and bringing up example where diarrhea, and so now when he brought in the diarrhea example, now he could focus on the food component of the whole thing. That means you had something bad. That's why you are having the diarrhea. Whereas in mind's case, what he's taking us or guiding us towards is identifying with something. Now, this term, identifying with something, is a huge problematic term in itself. The reason I say that is, you see, we all identify with something, regardless. I mean, we all will always do. Now, it is not good to identify with certain things, and I agree with Sadhguru on those things like nationality. A nationality, you are, I'm Bangladeshi, I'm British, I'm Swedish, I'm Indian, I'm Australian. We shouldn't tie ourselves into that sort of an identification and then try to, or kind of like create a divide, whereas I can just look at myself as a human being, as one of the members of this 7 billion people that we have in this world. I'm one of them. That makes me a member of a global family, a huge family. But as soon as I identify with a nation, my family becomes smaller. And as soon as I make my family smaller, everybody else becomes not my family. So immediately it causes a bit of problem. Then we further identify with religion, and then with our creed and caste and all these sort of concepts. And I totally agree with Sadhguru on those points, that we shouldn't do that, because if we can, if we stay away from identifying ourselves from these kind of concepts, then we can actually accept our differences much more easily. We can look at each other as brothers. And we can try and work together instead of thinking he's like that, Indian does things in this way, and like lots of, I mean, we all did that, isn't it? The English people, they wipe with the tissue paper, and the English people, they would look back at an Indian, they use, their hands with a pot of water, yucky business. So I understand the idea of that identification, but on this particular question, we are trying to keep our mind at rest. We are trying to keep. I already said that we cannot really stop our mind. Our mind will keep on going no matter what. So the only thing we can do is think about the pleasant things, and that's what we should probably do. Now, identifying yourself as a global human being, citizen of the world, you are identifying yourself with that, but that can actually make you feel good. That can actually help you to take other people as your close ones, loved ones. That is good, because if you do that, your tension goes away. The fear about other people, that seems to reduce. You communicate with them much easier. They communicate back, and we tend to build bridges. So I see that identifying with the wrong things is a problem, but identifying with the natural attributes that we have is actually beneficial. So when he tries to show this identifying as a problem, I think this is where he is trying to, sorry about saying this, but I think this is where he is invoking the mysticism idea and trying to evade the question. But let's see.
There is no other way. Do what you want. Try as hard as you want. It is not going to stop. If you do not identify yourself with anything that you are not, you know how to be with everything, you know how to use everything, but you're not identified with it.
If you don't identify with anything, that doesn't mean you can be with everything, you can the statements that he just made. I mean, he says it, and I don't know, most of you guys just go along with it and, true. How is it true? I mean, you don't identify with anything. The first problem is, how do you not identify with everything? How can you identify with nothing? And that's one problem, which I think is not possible, as he kind of like alluded to that as well, because your mind will keep on chatting. It will not stop. But then, because you don't identify with anything, you can be in line with anything. So I just don't understand that. What does he mean? What does he mean by that?
Then you will see, if you sit here, simply mind will be like this. You want to use it, you can use it, otherwise it will be like this. Right now your hands are like this, or you're holding it tied up because it will go all over, is it? No. You can keep it like this. You can keep it like this, you can keep it like this. When you want to use it, you can use it. So it's a useful instrument. Suppose your hands become like this. You know, some people have become like this. Yes or no? If it becomes like this, you will become ridiculous, isn't it? If it happens to your mind, also you are equally ridiculous. It is just that you are living in the comfort that nobody else can see it. But people can see it. They watch you closely enough, they can see it, isn't it? And whether they can see it or not, that's not the point. The point is, the most important faculty of your life is out of control. Doesn't matter whether they can see it or not, that's not the issue. The issue is, the most important faculty in your life is out of control, doing its own rubbish all the time, not doing what you want it to do. So, if you have to be freed from this ailment, you should stop eating bad food. Wrong food or bad food means you are identifying yourself with things that you're not. If you sit here, if you're not identified with this and with this, then you will see everything is just fine. Then your mind will do what you want it to do. Otherwise it will simply hang there, and that's how it should be.
And this is, according to my understanding, is not possible. And so he's giving an idea of an impossible thing, and obviously nobody will be able to do it. So if nobody can really do it, nobody can really come back and say it doesn't work, because that's the benefit of using these mystic ideas, where if I claim, yes, I have experienced it, there is no way you can tell me that I haven't experienced it, because you don't experience what I experience. And the same is true for you. So if you claim that you have experienced something, truly or falsely, there is no way I can say that your experience is wrong, or you didn't experience. I cannot say that, because I just don't have a way of knowing that. But when we try to share knowledge, lessons, that's why we talk about things that are rational. Rational means understandable by us as human beings. So it cannot be a concept that only I can understand through my experience. It has got to be a concept that you, when I present that concept to you, in front of you, you will be able to look at it and understand it, and then you can say, okay, and you can probably come back with some problems, of flaws in the model presented in front of you. So yeah, after such a long time, what Sadhguru told me to do, I just don't know how to do that. And yeah, if you guys did understand exactly what he's trying to tell, or answer to this, to the question of this gentleman, what he's trying to tell him to do, probably leave a comment and let me know exactly what you understood. I didn't.
mind should not be telling its own stories all the time. It should tell the story that you want it to tell, isn't it? Otherwise it's quite a nuisance.
So that was that. Yes, as you guys, I mean, I tried to share my thoughts, and I mean that's what I find really problematic. It's not like I've got nothing personal against Sadhguru. Okay, so he's obviously doing quite a few good things, and those are all good. I don't disagree with those. But when he's trying to share knowledge in quite a few things, he's just talking about things that are not possible, or things he will just use words or concepts of types that you cannot really argue against because it's experiential. So there is, if it is not logical and it is experiential, there is no way of actually really investigating it and looking into it. Either you take it as a blind belief, okay, he experienced it, it must be true, or you say, well, I haven't experienced it, and his speech didn't really make sense, so I don't know what he's talking about. And at this point, I'm in the second category. So yeah, leave your comments. I mean, some of you guys are, I mean, in my previous videos, some of you guys are leaving comments, which I really appreciate. But sometimes you're just trying to belittle me, belittle my rationality, and you may be right. You may be right, but just telling me that I'm an idiot doesn't really help my cognition. So that doesn't help me to understand things better. But instead of doing that, if you could actually put your understanding in words, if you can write down what you understood and leave it in a comment, probably that will. I mean, I could try reading that, and probably that will guide me to a better understanding, and that probably will enhance my perceptions, my knowledge a little bit. So yeah, I look forward to getting your comments, and I hope to see you again in the future. Take care. Bye bye.